Good morning. I want to share an idea with you. Actually, I tried to make a video last night to share a different idea, but then when I watched it to make sure it was okay, I actually put myself to sleep. I fell asleep. So I want to share a different idea with you from this week's Parshas Pinchas. Now we see at the end of the census, the very end of the census, the Torah tells us about who made it to the land of Israel. And it says, of these there was no man of those counted by Moshe and Aaron the Kohen, who counted the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For Hashem had said of them, they will surely die in the desert. And not a man was left of them except for Kalev and Yoshua. Rashi tells us on the spot, what is the Torah telling us that there was no man who made it? So Rashi tells us, al hanashim lo nigzar gzeras hameraglim, that this decree from the spies that the Jews were not allowed, that the people in the desert were not allowed to go into Israel, that only applied to the men, but not to the women. Why? They cherished, they desired, they loved the land. And that's why Rashi tells us that whereas the men wanted to return back to Egypt, the women did not. The women said, as well as the Torah goes on to tell us, give us our inheritance. And he says that is the reason that the very next part in the Torah is dealing with the daughters of Tzolofchad, because they desired the land, they loved the land. And the Torah tells us, when it tells us about the daughters of Tzolofchad, that these daughters, the Torah tells us that the daughters of Tzolofchad, the son of Hefer, the son of Gila, the son of Machia, the son of Menashe, the families of Menashe, the son of Joseph, drew near. And the daughters were Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they stood before Moshe and they said, our father died in the wilderness, but he died of his own sins and he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be omitted from amongst his family because he had no sons? Give us a possession among our father's brothers. And Moshe brought this claim before Hashem. Ultimately, God grants their request and he lets them inherit the land of Israel. And the question that's asked is, why is it that when these daughters of Tzolofchad are described, that they're described all the way back to Joseph, to Yosef, right? They're called the daughter of Tzolofchad, ben Hefer, ben Gilad, ben Machir, Menashe, Yosef. Like, we know already. Usually the Torah won't go back like 5 generations and tell us who they come from. So why is it telling us that they come from Yosef? So to this, Rashi says on a very, very similar idea. He says, Lama Nemar, why does it tell us that they're from Joseph? Havala Kvar Nemar ben Menashe. We know they came from Menashe. Menashe was the son of Yosef. So why are you telling me from Yosef? Rashi tells us, and I'll just read in the English, he says, because Yosef was chaviv es haaretz. I did Hebrew. Yosef loved the land. He loved Israel so much so that he made his children swear that they would drag his bones out of Egypt into Israel. He cherished, he longed to get back to Israel. That these granddaughters, these great-granddaughters of Yosef had this intense desire to go to Israel, just like their forefather Yosef, their great-grandfather Yosef. And the idea, the lesson from here is very powerful. That we see from this that whereas the women in this generation loved and desired and wanted so much to be in the land of Israel, ultimately they were able to go. Whereas the men, we see that by the spies, the Torah tells us that they despised the land. They didn't have that love, that passion. And we learn from this a very powerful lesson in life, that when we are passionate about something, when we love something, then nothing can hold us back. However, when we lack that passion, Rav Pam teaches us, when we lack that passion, then the first little speed bump can throw us off and make us give up and lose hope. And that's a profound idea, that in life, when we make goals for ourselves and we get inspired to do something and we set off to do it, usually we get started. But how many of us ever finish? And the idea is that if we're really passionate, if we really desire to make a difference, to make a change, and to achieve our goals, if we really set our goals and our desires to do that, then God willing, we will succeed. We will be successful. And if we lack that passion and don't really believe in ourselves, don't think we can do it, then the first speed bump, we will be derailed. So God willing, we can discover our passions, be passionate about the right things, and ultimately achieve tremendous success in everything that we do. And specifically this time of year when we are mourning the galus we're mourning the exile, perhaps we can follow in the steps, the holy steps of the daughters of Tzolofchad and Yosef, and long with all of our heart and soul to be back in Yerushalayim, to be back in Israel, that the Mashiach should come. The problem is we don't want it enough. And the Chafetz Chaim wrote a book, to Pisel Yeshua, that we don't long for the Geula, we don't long for the salvation that we needed so desperately. All of our problems ultimately are because we sit here in exile. And hopefully we can learn from the daughters of Tzolofchad and long with all of our heart and soul to be back in our land, may it be speedily and soon.